Thanks for tuning in again, guys. On this one, I want to talk about the preferred carburetor choice based off my experience for a 4V iron-headed Cleveland. Now, what I mean when I'm saying 4V iron head, I mean a left-alone large port 4V head. I'm not talking about a field intake. I'm not talking about a high port. I'm just talking about an old school left-alone large port 4V head. Now, most of you guys have probably seen my video, the past video I've put up, where I've talked about my Capri back in the days, about 25 years ago, running into the 10s NA as a street car. So this is the story about the carb that basically knocked off half a second in ET. Well, to be honest, pretty much three and a half tenths. To be honest, with more left in it. But now, look, I tried a number of carbs in those days when we were trying to sort this thing out, and I had a modified Holly 830 annular discharge, which, you know, we did some mods and whatnot to it. I also tried which was new back then, a Barry Grant Gold Claw with the removable Venturi sleeve. So I tried that. That was a 750 Barry Grant or a 775 CFM Barry Grant. But I'll tell you which carburetor kicked all their asses was an out-of-the-box, stock as you can get it, Holly 750 double pumper, old school. Now I'm talking about, you know, it still has the choke pod housing on there, the choke flap, the whole deal. Now, this carburetor, I tell you now, it shut the gates on all the rest of those carburetors, okay? Okay, let's back up a little here. Basically, the car was already running at this point like a high, by memory, I think it was a high 10.8s or a 10.90 with the 830 annular carb, right? Now, this also, need to pay attention to this also, this was at a track that was VHT prepped, so it was a big meeting where we ran that with the 830 annular, and, you know, they allowed for drop pipes, so we ran straight out extractors. So, yeah, look, you know, those little bits help, especially with a high compression 4V Cleveland, you know, and a bit of track prep, of course, that helps. But now, around that point too, we had given the combination a refresh. So we've sort of bumped up the compression. We've stepped up the cam a little bigger. We've done some fancy machine work. We modified the crank and you know, we knife edged the original crank, the 4MAB crank. We knife edged just for things like faster acceleration, things like that. You know, we built a good set of headers for it, some inch and 7/8 primaries, tune length, mandrel bent into 3.5-inch collectors. So, you know, so we were back out there with all these new things, with this new combination. And at this point, the track, our local track, has taken a turn where they've stopped big meetings. There was no more, you know, sort of big meets held there. It was just street meets on Wednesday night sort of thing. No track prep pretty much. You weren't allowed to drop your pipes. The minimum you can run was up to your diff. So, and I think you had to like use a muffler. It couldn't be straight pipe as well. It had to be like mufflers to the diff. Anyway, so we're back out there and this thing's barely backing up its previous ET. Now, we're scratching our heads and thinking, oh, hang on, I know this combination should make more power. It felt good, you know, sounded good. It felt strong on the street, but it just couldn't run the ET. So we're still running this 830 annular carb. And, you know, we're just figuring things out, trial and error. We think we know it all, you know. Little did I know the carburetor, you know, Venturi, things like that play a role. So, you know, the engine was well built. There was no fault with the engine, hands down. It was very well built, I should put it. And, you know, we just knew that this thing should have went harder. So at this point, I've decided to go seek some outside help, to help me out in what I'm missing here, and, just to sort things out as far as, tuning capabilities, as there's got to be something I'm missing here. So I've driven the Cleveland and myself down to Ned Sassine from Hercules Competition Engines. And the first thing I remember pulling up was, he said, okay, pop the hood. And I remember him saying the thing was freaking loud, rocking up there. And so, yeah, the first thing he's done is he's taken a look at the carburetor, and he's shaking his head. And I've gone, what's wrong? And he goes, oh, man, he goes, the wrong carburetor. That's a no-no. And I've gone, okay. I go, fair enough. And he's gone, why is it so loud for? And I've said, oh, it's to the diff. But, as I mentioned before, remember how I said our local track only permitted street cars at this point, and we needed to run pipes up until the diff, and it required mufflers, I believe. And now I had these straight through hot dog like resonator type of things, because I try to trick the officials at that point that it's got mufflers, but really it's just all straight through. And I thought, the Cleveland being high comp and all that stuff, that's what it loved, right? Now I remember Ned taking a look underneath, and he's gone, oh no. And I've gone, oh wow, okay, this is going to be interesting. First thing he said to me, I remember, was, he said, for starters, you got the wrong carb, not an 830 annular on a 4V Cleveland. And I've gone, okay, all right. And then he's gone, and your pipes, they're breathing too much. And I'm going, all right, fair enough. And I remember we were chatting about it, and I said, well, what do you suggest? And he goes, look, he said, leave the car with me. He goes, can I suggest I lend you my out-of-the-box brand new carburetor that I have here for, that he uses on his dyno motors and things like that. And I've gone, sure. I said, what size Holly? And he's gone, oh, it's a 750 double pumper. And look, I remember being a kid. Well, not a kid, I'm a teenager, but I remember it was like almost insulting to me, right? Because I thought at that time, oh man, I got a badass Cleveland 4V, surely, 750 double pump I used to run on my 2V combos, right? And they used to do well. And I'm like, oh, it was just sort of an insult, but he's the expert and he knows. And he's gone, no. He goes, it's got sort of not much to do with the CFM. It's not only about that, but it's about the Venturi, right? The size of that booster, the booster Venturi, sorry. And he said, I remember him explaining to me, he goes, look, this is a large port, 4V Cleveland, and you need, some help with velocity, right? Some proper atomization in there. And he's gone the 750. I've got the smaller booster Venturis and whatnot. And he goes, it just works better. And he just explained all that, the high speed and the funnel effect and all that stuff. And I've gone, wow. And he goes, look, the big booster stuff, you'll slap on motors with small port type of heads out there, like all those iron Brodex stuff that people were running back then on the Chevs and alloy heads and things like that, right? And because that's what I said to him. I said, oh, hang on, I've seen little Windsors out there not even running 10s, like they're in the low 11s or mid 11s, and I've seen Dominators on there. And I said to him, look, are you sure? And he's gone, yeah. He goes, don't worry about that. And I just remember him saying that's because they got those style of heads. That's why they're running that type of carburetor. But he goes, with these 4Vs, no. He goes, it's an opposite thing. And I've gone, all right. So he goes, look, leave the car with me. I'll go over your distributor, the timing, the jets and things like that. I'm going to bolt down my carby on there. But before he touched it, he said to me, can you just go to the exhaust shop, get rid of those straight through hot dog things that you got, and can you put a set of mufflers just before the diff? And I've gone, huh? Mufflers? And he's gone, yeah. He goes, just get yourself some center offset mufflers. And he goes, we just want a little bit of back pressure, just choke it a little. And I've gone, oh. And again, I thought, man, but, who am I? I'm just a teenager, and this guy is, the badass expert. So I've gone, whatever he says, I'm going to listen to, and learn. And I have learned from that, And so I've gone away, I've done that, I've sorted the pipes out. I've brought her back, and he goes, all right, now leave it with me. And then he goes, should be ready tomorrow. And, mate, I tell you, I come back the next day, and he just said to me, look, I've slapped it all together, we've tuned it. And he goes, I'll tell you now, he goes, we try to take it out just for a test run. And he goes, the car's a freaking handful. He goes, it just wants to blaze tyres everywhere and at any speed. And I've gone, wow, okay, I sort of know that, but the way he was saying it was okay. And he said, look, go borrow this carburetor, take it for a little while, and don't forget to give it back. And I've gone, no worries. And I'll tell you, I'll never forget that drive from his workshop back home. It felt, no word of a lie, like it had 100 to 120 shot of nitrous. Now, look, I'm no expert at nitrous, nor I've had much experience with nitrous, but you get what I'm trying to say. This thing felt like a different weapon altogether. I'll never forget that moment, that drive back, okay? I couldn't stop blazing the tyres all the way back home, and I was about 20 minutes away from his workshop, so I cruised the car. Every chance I could get, I would just thump a top gear, and I'll just do, 150 metre, burnout, black track. And first things first, I dropped it off at home. I said, oh, man, I couldn't believe how hard this thing went. And I said, mate, I'm going to the track. And, the rest is history. The car pretty much smashed off the trailer, just straight away went into the mid-10s with more left in it, because I remember Ned saying, and, I find this funny because I figured this out years later, and he did say to me, he goes, look, this car's got more in it. There's something with the box. He goes, at a later date, I'll like to go over the converter and the whole gearbox. And he goes, and I think we can get this into the low 10s, like we're talking 1020s, 1030s. And I've gone, are you serious? Wow, okay. And the funny thing was, okay, the 750 did the job. That's what ran the numbers. And, and to be honest, I forgot to give this carburetor back. I was enjoying the power and everything and all the quarter mile passes, but I eventually gave him back the carburetor like 3 months later. And I fixed him all up. I thanked him and all that stuff. And yeah, so that's where I learned that with a 4V iron head, not a high port, not a filled intake, we're talking old school, large port, 4V head on a Cleveland. If you're doing that combination between 450 to 550 horsepower, you don't put on a Dominator carb. You don't put an annular discharge. You don't put a carb on there that's too big, and especially with a big booster Venturi. It's a no-no on a 4V iron head with a Cleveland. Believe me, I've been there, done that, and I've learned from the best. Now, this 750 did the trick, okay? And what was I going to say? And so going back to the gearbox bit, once I was done and dusted, right, with the NA days, and I totally, set off to rebuild the car to what it is now, and I decided to go blower, right? Just something different. I thought 10s was the benchmark. Like back then, if you ran 10s, you were sort of king, and I just thought, I'll step it up a bit. I'll do something new, something, show pony. So I'll go blower out the bonnet. You can't beat that. It's badass. But I just remember him saying there's more left in the gearbox, right? And which was funny to me, because when we got the same gearbox rebuilt for my new combination now, it's the same gearbox, different converter, different gearbox builder as well. I remember my gearbox guy splitting the box this is shortly after I ran the numbers, okay? And I remember he pulled the box out in front of me. We pulled it all apart, and I think I mentioned this in the previous video about running 10s 25 years ago, that Al from Al's Race Guys goes, man, this thing, especially the top gear, all the clutches and that, he goes, it was all burnt out. And, yeah, I remember him just saying, and then that just brought a flashback about what Ned was saying. And, it just goes to show, when you're at an expert experience level, how, they can just hear and feel things and they just know. And this is just me being a teenager at that time, just learning. So, I really appreciate, all that help and all that knowledge, that I sort of gained through these guys. These guys were sort of the guys I looked up to, mentors, things like that in the horsepower world. And so I don't doubt that the Capri, sticking with that 750 double pumper, and if we did refresh the box and take a look at its faults and flaws, I don't doubt that the Capri would have, wouldn't have went in the low 10s, So there you go, guys. We'll wrap this up. So pretty much the Holly 4150, 750 double pumper for the win. He outdid all those bigger carbs that I mentioned. And, lesson learned here. So an open style large port, 4V headed Cleveland. And we're talking about your hot street and strip combination here. We're not talking standard to mild applications here. And, take note, the smaller booster Venturi type of ratio works best with these heads on a Cleveland, compared to bigger carb with bigger booster Venturi styles. So, yeah, thanks, guys.